Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Russian military is degrading beyond any reasonable capacity, and that is very clear for everyone to see in the newest videos. Their economy is as well doing very, very poorly, and we see that potentially in a very near future, Russia can hit major troubles. And finally, we celebrate a very, very special day today together with President Zelensky. These news and more in today's Ukraine Daily News Show. Let's begin. A new video appeared where Russian forces under the guise of a thick fog are entering the outskirts of city of Pokrovsk. And a lot of sources instantly paid attention to it. Wait a second. That's not really Russian forces, is it? Those are just some dudes in a post-apocalyptic world of Mad Max Fury Road. These are Russians. Sorry, I couldn't really tell them apart because, as you can see, Russians are not exactly, let's just say, the prime shape they used to be. It is truly fantastic that it only took Putin just a couple of years to turn from this to what we just saw, where people were, mixed again, where people were just literally driving some older vehicles, motorcycles, barely scraping around for anything that can still move so they can advance by throwing manpower to the grinder. And the good news is that while we see Russians advancing in this video, we also got a new video that was not there while the media was reporting on this. And this video shows some of the, not consequences, but aftermath of when the fog was lifted a little bit, and then Ukrainians were able to actually get the drone operators to work. As you can see here, there is no dead bodies. They all run into the houses, hid into the city. But I think this very much explains what the current advances of Russians are looking like in the front line. When there is a favorable conditions under which the forces can move when FPVs are not active, then everyone just tries to, not this one, everyone just tries to move in as fast as they can to get as much closer to the city as possible by using bikes or any other vehicles. And then whatever happens to these vehicles, it's not really our problem. And just to let people that haven't followed my frontline updates, what is happening right now at Pokrovsk is Ukrainians are having certain success around the northern part of Pokrovsk, and they are also not having as much success controlling Russians in the south, so they're kind of slowly withdrawing this southern part back up towards the northern areas, while also trying to completely close down this part of Russians and squeezing them out with actual successes in the area. So basically, they're trying to stabilize the front line and utilize Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration as much as they can. Even more signs of Russians' degradation of their economic systems are appearing. This time we have some evaluation of the state of the Russian long-term deposits with the rates not exceeding 7%. Quote, more than 70% of Russians place their savings in deposits with the term of up to 6 months. 3 months deposits have become the most popular, having accounted for 33.2% of the total in October. On the other hand, deposits for more than a year have practically lost their demand, with their share not exceeding 7%. This is obviously very problematic for Russia because if people will not be holding money on the deposit accounts, then if push comes to shove and Russia would need to freeze the deposits of their population, then potentially people will not have as much money on these deposit accounts. It's clear that Russians are slowly but surely not choosing to save in the Russian banks. The largest privately owned Russian oil company, Lukoil, has declared a force majeure situation, a legal step that suspends its obligations due to circumstances beyond its control. At Iraq's West Kurna 2 oil field, one of the country's largest, after Western sanctions disrupted its operations, 4 sources told Reuters. Lukoil informed Iraq's oil ministry last Tuesday that sanctions have made it impossible to continue normal operations at the field. The squeeze on the Russian energy sector continues, both by Ukrainian kinetic sanctions and also sanctions from the Europeans, the United Kingdom, and most recently, the United States. Ukraine aims to undo Soviet legacy and build an EU gauge rail link from Poland to Lviv starting in 2026. Ukraine will begin construction of a European gauge railway connecting the Polish border to Ukrainian city Lviv in 2026. Ukrainian Ministry of Finance announced following a meeting between Deputy Finance Minister Alexander Kava and the American Chamber of Commerce on November the 10th. The new 1,435-millimeter line is part of Ukraine's integration into the EU Trans-European network and will be co-financed under the Connection Europe facility, which covers up to 50% of the project costs. This is a fantastic development. Europeans and post-Soviet states, we had different type of width of the gauge for rails. This, for a very long time, prevented both the operations of transport vehicles, where the adjustments would need to be made whenever one part of Europe would transport goods from the other part of Europe. But more importantly, different gauges would not, for example, allow to use some kind of older stock locomotives for the eastern countries, and that created a lot of issues. That countries could not use a lot of the infrastructure and the machinery that was developed specifically for Western Europe. Over the last couple of decades, things have been slowly changing up, aka Rail Baltica. Latvia, I'm looking at you for now. So major development for Ukrainian fight against their corruption, as they're having one corruption case already discussed yesterday that is ongoing and leading to more and more discoveries of corruption at the top echelon of the Ukrainian government. And now also London court finalized a ruling requiring oligarch Igor Kolomoisky and his partner Gennady Bilogubov to pay private bank over $3 billion in compensation and legal costs. The 10th November ruling marks the culmination of 8-year legal battle that began when Ukraine nationalized the country's largest bank in December of 2016 after discovering the oligarch has siphoned approximately 5.5 billion, roughly 1.5% of Ukraine's 2014 GDP through the fraudulent loans to shell companies. The judgment represents the largest banking fraud recovery in Ukrainian bank history, though enforcement remains uncertain given the complexity of the corporate structures and multiple jurisdictions involved. Indeed, there's going to be a problem of recovering of the assets, but I think this will make a lot of Ukrainians very happy that finally, 8 years after a big fraud and corruption case was committed in Ukraine, it is now being resolved, and some of the funds will be coming back. While Russia's list of friends keeps shrinking, there are some that Russia still can put some hope into. Such as, for example, North Koreans. The newly leaked documents showed that since 2022, Pyongyang has supplied Moscow with about 6.5 million munitions in exchange for Russia's military technologies to produce its own weapons. Specifically, the documents received by the journalists indicate the transfer of air defense technologies, space development, and 20 billion in aid, and nuclear technologies. The biggest issue for North Korean nuclear missiles that was there before Russia handed them over technologies was miniaturization. While there could have been a nuclear warhead, a nuclear missile in North Korea, they were pretty far away to miniaturize it to the size that it would be threatening to its neighbors or even the United States. Now, with Western response to Russian attacks being very timid and Russia coming closer negotiations, breaking every single statute on sanctions in United Nations with regards to North Korea now has all of these technologies and more. There are appearing news like these and people get really excited because China is something that we would really want to influence to stop purchasing Russian oil. However, here I want to advise against putting too much value into news like these, because while there are certain companies in China such as Yanchang that is looking to cut supplies for some of the oils, the devil here is in the details. For one, because the Chinese refiner Yanchang Petroleum is seeking the non-Russian oil in its latest crude oil tenders. It is important to note that these ones are short-term deliveries aiming between December and mid-February. So it doesn't really show that there is any kind of potential trend change. They're maybe looking just for a short-term substitute before they find their ways around how to get Russian oil anyway. And secondly, there are other oil refining companies that are purchasing Russian oil anyways because they're not doing a lot of business with the Western companies, so they just do it anyway. So while we do see that there is now good push in India, and a lot of Indian companies are definitely stating no to the Russian oil, China, hold your horses. A very positive news coming from Germany, where it has been announced that Germany plans in 2026 increase support for Ukraine by another 3 billion euros. Europe is turning into an absolute powerhouse, especially with yesterday's mentioning that Norway is looking to guarantee funds to be supplied to Ukraine in case Belgium has still some reservations, which would open a potential pathway for the release of the Russian frozen assets. I think that we are slowly edging there, but it's good to see that country like Germany has such a major turnaround with the change of the government. Now, I know that Merz is a bit of a controversial person inside of Germany, but for Ukraine, he has been amazing. And not only for Ukraine, this has been also great for the unity of us Europeans and for our own security. Thank you to Germany. There are some interesting changes in the European Union. There has been a couple of news that are describing the same sort of operations with the same sort of a structure. The European Commission has started creating a new intelligence unit amid Russia's hybrid warfare. It will be subordinated to the head of the European Union, in this case Ursula von der Leyen. Quote, the intelligence services of the EU member states know a lot. The Commission knows a lot. We need a better way to bring it all together to be effective and useful to our partners. In intelligence, you have to give something to get something, one of the interlocutors said. So there has been other news with regards to new structures created directly under Ursula von der Leyen. Well, her position, I mean, not herself as a person. And this is new because what this does, specifically those structures that were mentioned, is the anti-Russian propaganda structures. So I truly think that Europeans have started moving alongside some kind of a plan where they're trying to centralize operations on the European scale to fight off some of the Russian hybrid warfare, and in this case, for example, unify some of the intelligent apparatuses works. I am all for it, and it's good to see that we Europeans are finding solutions even in our very, very mixed societies. And talking about propaganda, Russia is continuing pushing their AI fake news propaganda with the generated videos by the AI. This time, the topic that they're covering is the encirclement of Kupiansk. Not only Russians have not encircled Kupiansk, Ukrainians have been doing quite successful counteroffensive operations around Kupiansk, and they've been squeezing Russians little by little out of the city. We're going to find out a little bit more details in the coming days, and specifically we're going to cover this situation in the next Frontline update. Finally, some news that really warm up my heart. Today is November 11, a 3-day anniversary since the liberation of Kherson. Kherson was the only regional center that Russia captured during their full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And it still is. even despite the fact that Russia is advancing in some areas, despite that Russia is capturing some settlements, that Ukrainians are struggling with some of their manpower issues, and the war changes different ways. But all in all, Ukraine keeps fighting, and so far, Russia is not being able to achieve any kind of larger strategic goals. And I'm pretty sure Ukraine will not let them. Thank you for making it this far. I love you. Slava Ukraini, trust in Ukraine, trust in Ukrainian armed forces, and I will see you next time.